Like Chilean vampires emerging from the pit. Welcome to Buffy Boys Season 2. I am very excited. My name is Joel and your name is
Brian.
And this is your weekly Buffy rewatch, literary and LGBTQ analysis. And we are coming to you live. No, that's not how podcasts work. From Dublin, Ireland. Here we go.
Aoife was here, my sister, earlier, and she asked if we record the podcast live. I had to explain to her, no, that's not how that works. It's a doofus.
It's a terrible strain on the animators' voices. So Brian's like a fantastic idea. So this is Buffy Boys 2.0 revamped. We're being disruptive. We're being innovative.
We're being a little bit more emo than you'd expect. A little bit more edgy. This is our teen years.
Yeah,
we're ready for it.
This is our sophomore album. We're applying our Trinity graduate attributes. And his idea was, let's just go off script. Let's, not refer to our notes as much. Let's, loosen up a couple of beers beforehand. And let's really kind of get down and dirty into it. So I am raring to talk about this episode, which is
When She Was Bad, which was written and directed by Joss Whedon, which is great. And it was released for the first time on September 15th, 1997. So sometime after the first season aired. Only 4 months.
That would have been May. Just after my 6th birthday.
Yeah, it was just after your 6th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Weird,
yeah.
Yeah, you're old.
That actually wasn't where I was going with that. I was like, I'm quite young. But anyway, I'm still in the 18 to 45 year old age bracket. So
everyone cares about your opinions.
Exactly, yeah. Do you want to give us a summary from the Buffy Summaries book?
Yeah, sure. Okay, this is what it says. Buffy returns from vacation in bitch mode, flirting with Xander and snubbing Angel to an extent that causes Cordelia to rebuke her. The Anointed One has his minions abduct Willow, Giles, Jenny, and Cordelia, who are physically close to the Master's death, to his new factory lair so their bones may reanimate him. Buffy rescues them and smashes the Master's bones.
Now, did I say their bones or their blood?
Oh, I've already lost the page.
It probably said blood.
I'd imagine so. Did I say bones?
You did say bones. Now,
yeah, they need their bones.
What?
So their blood, yeah. Oh my god, that's the loudest plane I've ever heard.
I was like, it could be a plane or it could be Irish president or King of the Fairies, Michael D. Higgins returning to his house in his helicopter. That's often a sound that we hear.
We do hear him coming back. We live really close to Oris and Uachtaran, which is the president's house.
The ice cream house, yeah.
Yeah, the ice cream house. Uachtarocha. Yeah. So season 2 of Buffy is fucking amazing. I love season 2 of Buffy.
What I wanted to point out there before we moved on from that is your summary says, the summary I read on the Buffy Wikipedia says, Buffy returns after her summer with her father Hank, showing textbook symptoms of PTSD after her harrowing encounter with the Master. Your book says she returns in full-on bitch mode, which are two very different interpretations.
Pretty much.
So basically in terms of just a very rough summary of what happens in this episode, Buffy comes back from after summer, no vamp activity. She comes back, vamps come back again. The Anointed One, who is the child vamp, wants to resurrect the Master by taking his bones, pouring some blood on it from the people who are physically closest to him. And really all around this, she is dealing with her PTSD and her symptoms of having been through this traumatic experience, and how can we move forward now after this. That's really what happens here, and her trying to integrate back into Sunnydale. So I suppose before we do anything, I thought it might be nice at the top here to be like, what did you think about this episode? Like, what's your gut reaction? Was this a good episode for you? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it loads. So the first thing I noticed was that this episode features way more choice quotes than you'd think in a season 1 episode. I was kind of used to the every so often getting a good little nugget, but this season and this episode starts off strong. There's just loads of good writing. There's loads of good banter. There's loads of good little interactions. Snyder-Giles interactions. I don't think we're going to even probably touch on that in this episode, like talking about it. But those are great when they were talking, and Giles and Snyder have a little interactions about Snyder is talking about how disgusting children are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I think season 2 is just a great fucking season of TV.
I've actually been surprised when I've been looking ahead at what we're going to be doing this season. I'm not super it's not an obvious series of television to me, like things like Buffy season 1, probably Buffy season 3, series 4 Doctor Who, stuff like that. I know Inside Out, I know the running order of it, and some of these are actually it's going to be a fresh surprise to me.
So this season, it's near and dear to my heart. I remember had the season 1 on DVD box set, and that was like amazing. It was my prized possession. But in season 2, I couldn't afford to get the DVD box set for season 2 because they were so expensive. It was like £60 back in the day, which would probably be the equivalent of €100 now. And instead, I used to buy the VHS box sets for seasons 2 through 5, I think I ended up getting. So, but like they all came in 2 different box sets. So you'd get like episodes 1 through 12 in the first set, and then 13 through 22 in the second. And I remember season 1 had like a red box and a yellow box, and I remember like buying them and just thinking, and I got them for cheap. I got them for like £19 each or something, which is still ridiculously expensive.
This is VHS we're talking about, is it?
VHS, and you get 11 episodes for £19. But I remember thinking, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and watching them and being able to see nothing because it was VHS quality rather than DVD even, and it was just great. Loved it.
I never had really TV on, at home video, but the only episodes I remember having was something where episodes of Star Trek Voyager, and there was only 3 episodes per VHS, and so that's why I'm kind of like, my mind was blown by the idea of you having 11 episodes on one VHS.
No, it wasn't one VHS. It was one VHS
series
box set. So if
a
a series fit on 6 VHSs, you'd get 3 VHSs per set.
I get you. Okay. Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about before
season.
No worries, yeah. Before we kind of get into it proper is, and why I'm stoked to really like dig deep into this feminist touchstone is that we went to see Captain Marvel during the week, which really got my juices flowing in terms of thinking about this stuff and how a lot of what happened in Captain Marvel and a lot about this conversation about female superheroes and all that really develops on things which I think Buffy really brought into the zeitgeist in some ways. So what were we have a well-established tradition on the walk home from the cinema of really like saying, yeah, I enjoyed this film. Let's poke holes in it in 1,000 ways. So what was your takeaway? What were your thoughts about Captain Marvel, and maybe how that kind of female superhero thing connects with Buffy?
Yeah, sure. I thought it was not great. I enjoyed it loads, but it was badly written. It was a bad script, just full-on bad script. Loved Brie Larson, thought she was amazing. Loved just the notion of an easy-going female superhero. I'm pretty sure she's lesbians with the black lady in it, and I'm all about it.
In the film,
yeah. But I didn't love it. I was so ready to love it, but I didn't. I do think that Buffy absolutely has paved the way. I was going to say caved the way. Has paved the way for this kind of female superhero genre, but I don't think it got there.
Yeah, and I suppose my takeaway, which I said to you, was, I'm really excited for Captain Marvel 2 because I feel like this had to break the glass ceiling, lay some groundwork, all that kind of stuff. Definitely a 79% out of 100. But what I did say to you is it's definitely one of the most enjoyable individual superhero origin stories, and it doesn't do anything innovative, but it doesn't do anything worse than we would see from any male superhero story, like any Captain America, the First Avenger, any of that kind of stuff. And fundamentally, and uncontroversially, in my opinion, even when it is trite or predictable, it's far more enjoyable to see a woman doing these things, because just by the very virtue of engaging with that energy and with her having this female best friend who's also a pilot with her, and that person being a single mother, and Brie Larson's character also dealing with a certain amount of PTSD and memory loss and all this kind of stuff, it just inherently makes it a more literarily interesting thing, even when it is being somewhat pedestrian.
Just replace straight men in every property with anyone else, and you're
with Brie Larson.
Please, I would love that. Brie Larson, I was tweeting about this the other day. Brie Larson was the first girl I ever lied about fancying.
A milestone.
Yeah, because she was in Raising Dad, which is a really bad TV show with Bob Saget and Kat Dennings, which was on Nickelodeon back in the day. I'm not sure what was on in America. She was great in it. She was like my age, or no, she's like a year older than me now, so she would have been a year older than me then too, I presume. And yeah, she was cool. And then, which meant that anything she was ever in afterwards, I kind of kept an eye out for. So when she was in United States of Tara, I was like, oh cool. Even though United States of Tara was not a good TV show in the end.
You did watch all of it though.
I watched literally all of it, yeah. Or Scott Pilgrim, she's in.
She is.
Yeah, and also Don John, stuff like that.
Her boyfriend in Scott Pilgrim was also a superhero.
Yeah.
Brandon Routh plays Superman.
Yeah, he's a vegan.
Yeah, not superheroes.
What?
I'm saying that's not the part of him that's a superhero.
It literally is. He gets a superhero.
I get it. I do.
Oh, he's a superhero because he's Superman?
Yes. Brandon Routh plays Superman in Superman Returns. That's what I was getting at. He also plays a superhero.
Yeah, true.
Okay. So careening, jackknifing back towards this episode of Buffy, what are your, I suppose, what's kind of the overall thing that kind of stood out from you that this episode? Personally, I thought it was very interesting in terms of, any other fantasy TV show might say, okay, season 2, who's the new big bad? Let's go back to our third, I didn't mean to be pejorative there, but our familiar, comfortable structure. And instead Buffy's like, no, what happened after the credits roll? You know, she's really fucked up about this, basically. So kind of, how did you feel about that?
So I actually felt a little bit of tension there in a negative sense.
Okay.
I felt like this episode sat awkwardly in the Buffy canon a little bit. I think it was a great episode. I think it was well thought out. I think it was well handled. But if you look at it, like, Buffy ends season 1 the strongest she's ever been. She's this strong, resourceful young woman who's faced her worst fear and has overcome it, ready to take on the world. And season 2 comes around and she's brooding. And I'm not saying that's not realistic. I just don't think it was planned for. I think they ended season 1 with a bang, because if they ended with her feeling the trauma of what had happened, of being killed, of being, attacked so aggressively by the Master, it would have been downer. It would have been bad plotting, to end the season that way, especially when you're worried that it's going to be a series finale rather than a season finale. So I think opening now is a bit of a retcon on the season 1 finale, to be honest. That's not to say that there isn't a nuance to how people experience trauma. Of course there is. People can experience elation after having experienced a traumatic event of having survived, and then experience the consequences of it, or the effects of it afterwards. But I didn't feel like that was the narrative intended here.
Okay.
But at the same time, if you say to me at the end of season 1, oh, hey, do you want the next episode to be an episode where Buffy actually deals with the consequences of having, dealt with the Master? Absolutely, I want to watch that episode. Yeah.
No, I can definitely see what you're saying. I think it's unavoidable from a production point of view that they expect the first season to potentially be self-contained. And, there was some rewriting and definitely restructuring of how even she interacts with Xander and all that kind of stuff in terms of the season. But that being said, as you said, if that retconning or that restructuring leads to a better show, I'm kind of all for it. Kill your darlings to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I definitely see your point, but I would just disagree on it in the sense that I think, it worked for me. It really, for me, landed.
Sorry, you disagree with me?
Yeah, I know. It's groundbreaking. It really worked for me in the sense of, just if I was watching this as it airs, I would be drawn in by the fact of like, oh, we're still talking about this. And some of the stuff it explored in terms of counterpointing, because the main thing about this episode, PTSD acknowledged and trauma acknowledged, is she is being a bit of a bitch, to be honest. Like, she's specifically mentioned as being very mean, very callous, and it gives this weird inversion where when she becomes colder and more callous, it gives Cordelia room to seem more sympathetic, for one thing.
Yeah.
And she tortures a vampire. Let's not overlook that. She endangers people. The Cordelia specifically gets captured because she's not paying attention. Like, that's an explicit link drawn there. I'm not saying it's necessarily Buffy is completely responsible for that, but the visual link is she would usually be more clued into it, and she...
Okay, so this is one of my issues with the episode, is that there are 2 points at which Buffy's kind of suggested to have threatened her friends' lives. Cordelia not having paid attention to her, and then having not figured out that the trap was not for her. In both instances, there's nothing she could really have done. Like, she shouldn't have been... You can't expect people to look over their shoulder to make sure that people who they're just talking to don't get whisked off into the night. That's crazy. And then with the trap thing, where essentially what happens is that Buffy thinks that there's a trap being set for her in the Bronze because she's being told to go there, or they're going to cook Cordelia and, or they're going to eat Cordelia and Miss Calendar. What's actually happening is that they're trying to lure Buffy away to attack her friends.
In the library.
In the library. And everyone there agrees that it's probably a trap for Buffy in the library. And then when they realise that Giles has misread...
In the Bronze.
In the Bronze, sorry. And when they realise that Giles has misread what's happened in his translation from Sumerian into Latin into English, as being that the people who they need to revivify the Master are Cordelia, the people who are nearest to him physically when he died, which are Cordelia, Miss Calendar, Willow, and Giles. That's when they realized, like, she didn't have that information. So there's a really not good scene where Xander really aggressively tears into Buffy because of her having let this happen, essentially.
Like, he does do that, and we said that Xander has a tradition of often being quite judgmental and quite mean in these situations, so I'm not defending Xander's approach specifically here, but I do contend that while your points make sense from a practical real world point of view, the show has a position, and the show's position is that when Buffy ostensibly is saying, I'm going to protect you, stay out of this, but sometimes she says that from a place of concern. And what she specifically says in this episode at one point is, can we have a little less back chat from the civilians?
Yep.
And what I think is, again, your points are solid from a real world point of view, but what the show is saying is that she needs to work with people for people to live. She needs to have that community and that sense of her strength being drawing other people. And when she endangers them and herself and the endeavor is when she allows this emotional disconnect. So it's not really a malicious thing, but it is saying that Buffy, if she was more empathic and more clued in as she usually is, she would have noticed these things going on. It's maybe slightly ham-fistically, but portraying a recklessness.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, for sure. No, she's not being nice, but just the degree to which the characters are judgmental of her for having endangered people, I think, is not realistic within the text, if you get me.
Yeah, but I suppose across the episode, she also calls Cordelia a moron. And,
yeah.
like, specifically,
she's horrible to her, yeah.
Specifically, like, ignores Angel and then, flirts with Xander really aggressively, can make both of them jealous or, like, pay attention to her and then disappear. Like, it's all classic, like, manipulative behavior.
Totally agree.
But very much an outgrowth of the trauma that she's had, and her, acting out in a way that I suppose the climax of the episode is her finding the Master's bones and smashing them to pieces with a sledgehammer and having this literally, a cathartic moment and to process all of this, and it kind of shows in retrospect, that's kind of, it casts it in a maybe a more sympathetic light for her.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So one of the major themes I picked up on in this episode was the kind of difficult transition from childhood to adulthood, as shown in the last episode. So the rejection of the forever childhoodness that the Anointed portrayed to her, in offering her kind of a whimsical approach and accepting her destiny, essentially. In this episode, it really does feel like when she accepted that destiny, that she has lost something, that she's lost her ability to empathize and connect, which is really kind of quite sad.
Yeah.
The way her parents talk about her, the fact that she has to distance herself so aggressively from her parents for a practical reason, they can't know that she's a Slayer, is quite like traumatizing for any child to have experienced that, I think. And yeah, I'm actually not sure where I'm trying to go with this.
Well, Hank Summers, her father, who we should know this is his last real world appearance in the show. All his future appearances, really in the Buffy canon for the most part, are hallucinations and so on and so forth. He talked about...
Or is his other appearance the only real instance of reality in the whole show?
Well, that's a question, because obviously the other time he appears, she either dreams she's in a mental asylum, or she dreams that she's a Slayer, or it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I have to say for Hank, he's not portrayed as a bad guy. He's just the relationship didn't work out, which I think is a relatively, not healthy isn't the word I'm looking for, but just like not the easiest road to go down. But anyway,
he's portrayed pretty negatively as it goes on, because he very actively seems to lose interest in both of his kids.
Yeah, no, he does, and like but there's no melodrama of like he was an alcoholic and abusive and these really obvious pantomime things. It's just not too dissimilar, I think, to Rory Gilmore's relationship with her father, is that he's not a great parent, but it's not a malicious situation.
Agreed.
But he specifically points out that he tries to reconnect with Buffy over the summer by buying her clothes and shoes, and something which I think that draws a connection to is the first thing she talks about, one of the first things she talks about in the pilot episode of Buffy
with Cordelia
is about shoes and LA and fashion and all that kind of stuff. And I think that ties in with what you're saying and trying to scramble to reclaim some of this. These early seasons are really very much about that desperation of trying to reclaim the unblemished child Buffy was before she, definitely from her parents' point of view, inexplicably got caught up in all of this delinquency. And when you get to the point where she's in season 7 and she's a high school guidance counselor, is that the right term for it?
She is indeed.
But she and I don't think she didn't finish college, did she?
She doesn't, no, unfortunately.
But she doesn't finish college. She becomes a high school guidance counselor. She's taking care of her sister by herself. And that's like a progression. And actually quite independently of being a Slayer, is a progression in terms of this is okay too. This is a worthwhile way to live your life and develop, when you're happy and using your skills to your full potential. But right now, it's that classic teenage feeling we've all experienced of there being a way you were meant to live your life and you are not doing it properly. And I think this episode has a real sense of drowning to that, of trying to claw your way out of that, which is quite poignant.
I'd agree. Cordelia has a really weird position in this episode. So Cordelia, I kind of suggested, having read about it online, someone saying it, that is to some degree a shadow self of Buffy in a Jungian sense.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the episode Out of Mind, Out of Sight, where Cordelia represents Buffy's life pre-Slayerness, where she was the prom queen, she was the kind of, could be the selfish, unattached, kind of floaty, popular girl. And in this episode, that really like lands. It's great. Cordelia has some great moments, just full stop.
Is it possible to have too much character?
Yeah, that was wonderful. So Cordelia is talking about how she had a really difficult summer because she didn't get to go to Saint Croix? Saint Croix? Yeah.
Basically, and Saint Croix in French.
Yeah, so she wasn't able to go near any beaches, and she's really sad about this.
Oh, actually, no, let's be really clear. The issue was, we were meant to go to Saint Croix, and we had to go to Tuscany instead. No one's ever suffered as much as I've suffered. Like, that was the point of it, yeah.
Tuscany's Italy, right?
Well, yeah, but I would never be certain if Tuscany was like Tuscany, Arkansas or something. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
But potentially Italy, yeah.
Did you notice that Xander was wearing a Scooby-Doo t-shirt at one point?
You know, I did notice that it had Scooby-Doo on it, but I did generally note that they were dressed like Scooby-Doo characters. Mysteries Inc. is that right?
Oh, Mysteries Inc. Yeah, I think so.
But they like the two of them very much had color coded like Fred and Velma kind of clothes. But no, the fact that he was actually wearing Scooby-Doo merch, I didn't see that.
There's a Scooby-Doo on his t-shirt in the opening scene. Oh, actually. Sorry, let's go back to Shadow Cordelia. Cordelia in that scene is quite nice to them. She a bit too obviously talks about Buffy being a vampire slayer, which is awkward. But she's trying to just be friendly and nice towards them, which is, you know, nice. And then later in the episode, she berates Buffy for her attitude.
She calls her out, absolutely.
She really does call her out. And that whole scene I actually want to talk about separately because I think it's great. Mm-hmm. That opening scene, that was really good. It was such a classic paradigmatic Buffy episode or opener. You know, Xander and Willow walking down beside a cemetery where they're quoting lines from movies at each other and trying to make each other guess what they were, which they refer to Terminator, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars, and then Witness. Witness is a really weird one. Have you seen that?
I haven't. I presume it's about the Amish.
Yeah, it's about the Amish. It's Harrison Ford falling in love with an Amish woman, and because her son saw a gangland murder, a gang murder, mm-hmm. and he has to protect them. It's not a good movie. It's weird though, but it's a really weird reference to throw in there.
It's also the first of what becomes a recurring theme for the rest of the season premieres, which is starting in a graveyard.
Yeah, and this is the beginning of that.
I also like the clear suggestion is that there's been no supernatural or vampire activity in Sunnydale since the Hellmouth quote unquote closed at the end of season 1, which is unusual. Yeah, definitely.
And Willow and Xander nearly kiss, which was quite interesting. It was weird.
Yeah. And it's not even just hinting at like he is about to kiss her.
Yeah, and then there's a vampire behind them, which is awkward.
Yeah, and then there's this awful juxtaposition, as in like heartbreaking, because what happens is she gets some ice cream on her nose, and he jokes about kind of licking it off, and they nearly kiss because Buffy isn't there, and he's kind of like, you know, fingers pining over her. And later in the episode, Buffy comes back and he's mooning over her at the bronze, and she deliberately puts ice cream on her nose again to try and get his attention. He just ignores her, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, but it's also, Willow, you can do so much better.
Yeah, she really can, and she does.
Tara, yeah,
and Oz.
And Oz, good point, yeah.
And Kennedy.
Yeah, I see. I don't have any emotional connection to Kennedy because I've never really watched season 7 yet.
I don't have an emotional connection to her either. I still think she's better than Xander.
True. Yeah.
Okay, so that dream sequence.
Yes.
First thing we should have copped on that it was a dream sequence.
What happened in the dream sequence is probably important.
Oh, sure. So Buffy's talking to Xander and Willow, and
in the new student lounge set.
Set, yeah, which is kind of recurs quite a bit. I remember Oz sitting there a lot.
I remember Oz sitting there because him and Willow both got called up because they're computer geniuses
to the FBI. Yeah,
the FBI, and that's where they meet, or where they talk properly.
Yeah. But they're having a dream, and Giles comes along and starts strangling Buffy, and she takes his face off, and it's the Master.
Yeah.
So, while Xander and Willow do nothing to help her.
Yeah. So a couple of things there which I thought was really interesting. One is, it's something I remember about Anthony Head, is just where he comes back, he's like, oh, I know what's happened, the vampires, and she's like, what is it? And he says, you know, in a really chilling way, oh well, it shouldn't be that much to worry about. I shouldn't have much trouble killing you. I killed you so easily the first time. And it's like, you know, this betrayal of trust kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that specifically, she nightmares about the Master trying to basically viciously choke her to death, which is actually not how they interacted at all.
Except that she drowned.
No, he bit her and she drowned. Absolutely. Yeah. But there wasn't this animalistic Because specifically what we noticed about the Master was how he almost disrespected her by just drinking from her bit and almost didn't even pay attention to her. He wasn't a lower vampire. He just kind of dismissed her. But this version of the Master in her dream was a much more vicious animal, which is like totally in line with the trauma she's experienced. But I said to you during the episode, gosh, it's really interesting they brought back Mark Metcalf, who plays the Master. I didn't think he was in this episode, and he wasn't, because it was David Boreanaz under the Master's makeup.
No.
Yes, which genuinely surprised me. So Angel's actor played the Master in that scene. Like, boom, unpack that.
You're kidding.
No, absolutely. It was David Boreanaz.
Why? Because he ends up being the big bad of the season, presumably?
Well, maybe, but also just because they just didn't bring back that actor,
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'd love to find out why it was, but that makes all those scenes kind of...
Yeah.
The whole subtext there a bit more.
I mean, like, if you're saying, listen, we can't get Mark back, you definitely put someone in there. And why the fuck not would you put David Boreanaz there? Oh, that's crazy.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great. I should have copped on immediately that it was a dream, because Xander and Willow swap lunches and Willow ends up with a chocolate bar and Xander ends up with an apple. And I was like, that's not realistic.
Yeah. And they're both happy with it.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of things there. One, another really strong connection between Giles, Buffy's spirit father, and... Chosen father, and the Master being the disturbed, deranged father figure for Buffy. So there are three fathers in this episode, again, with Hank being the third. So that's an interesting through line. And yeah, that kind of, it's hard to dismiss the suggestion that Giles has killed her as well, when in Nightmares he dreamt her as being a vampire, as well as the textual reference there, which is the Master killing her. And then in addition to that, what's really interesting is Willow and Xander doing nothing to help her, which is obviously her issue in this episode. She feels like she's the only person who can do anything in these situations, that her friends can't help her, that she's totally alone. So yeah, it was good. It was a good dream sequence, as Buffy dream sequences tend to be.
And it's a constant like examination of this. You know, a lot about Buffy is about breaking down these tropes and these power dynamics and how that can be both positive and negative. And the issue with Giles and Buffy is that Giles traditionally should be in charge. Yep. He has all the experience, he's all the seniority and the age and all that. He should be taking care of her, but he can't. And she can take care of him. And human relationships aren't designed to work that way in many ways. You know, it can't really... Like, it's an odd situation where there's a plurality of power dynamics, where he does have some authority over her and some experience, and she has some authority over him and some experience that he doesn't have. You know, the traditional structure of power dynamics are very... flows one way, but this is a more of an overlapping or a parallel line, you know.
Would you say they queer the power dynamics a little bit?
I don't think I would ever say that, to be honest. That doesn't really sound like something I would say, but if you want to say that, that's cool.
I don't, thank you. It's good though. It's a good scene. Are Giles and Snyder friends now because Giles had nothing to do for the summer?
They're absolutely not friends. He's constantly talking to Giles, and there's absolutely no textual reason why he would be. And Giles doesn't like him, but they always hang out together. I think... You know, I've never really considered. You know the thing about sometimes the people you hang out with in secondary school who you think are your friends, but it's actually just because you have to be in the same place and the same classes all the time?
No, I never would have experienced that.
Yeah, all those people who we were friends with in secondary school that we still definitely hang out with now.
I was nearly about to say their names, and I was like, no, not going to do that. That's an awful idea.
I was going to say, sorry, John, but you're not listening to this. JD, yeah.
JD, you see at least once a week now.
Yeah, but eventually when we get to season 6, he'll listen to all this in one go and then be like, oh.
And you'll be obsessed and you'll write a Wikipedia page about it.
He will, absolutely. Yeah. But maybe it's like that for teachers as well. Maybe they literally just have to see each other. So what do we think about the Order of Aurelius in this episode?
Okay.
And which I will say briefly, because I'm sure you've thought about it, led by a African-American vampire, shall we say, one of the few in the series. Yep. Unusual insofar as he very much carries on this traditional old-fashioned way of speaking about forsooth we shall summon the Master, etc. Never goes out with vamp face, which is also quite unusual. And apparently his name is Absalom, which is not something that came up and is obviously from the script, and you know, is a real hangover from season 1, Vampire King, prophecy, mythology, etc. But what do you think about in terms of how it fit in this episode?
A couple of things. One is that every single vampire in this episode has a name and a Wikipedia entry on the Buffy Wikipedia entry, or Buffy Wikipedia, which means that just Wikipedias in general have gone too far. Anyway, so Absalom, there are a couple of interesting things there. One is that Absalom is a biblical figure. Absalom was the son of David, who abandoned his father and fought against him and dies subsequently. I know this because Faulkner has a really great novel called Absalom, which famously has like 3-page long sentences and incredibly long paragraphs, and it's just an excellent dark text throughout. It's actually about race relations as well, extensively about how this man has a bunch of children he's incredibly deeply racist and aggressively so, and he has a bunch of children with his slaves who rise up to a degree. So that's definitely a reference there. But I do imagine that it's a Faulkner reference here rather than a biblical one. However, I really thought that what he was wearing around his neck was a Star of David, which I thought connected to the Old Testament reference there in Absalom. But the Order of Aurelius sign is a 6-tendrilled sun.
Okay.
Which is very similar to Star of David, obviously. So maybe it's just a cross reference. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about the references there.
There's definitely, him wearing this symbol. There's a implication, I think, of religious and biblical and inescapably, I think, Judeo-Christian imagery. So even if it's not meant to be a Star of David, it's meant to basically be like a non-copyright infringing Star of David to some degree.
Yeah, and which is weird because I actually don't know anything about black community in America and Zionism. I know the only thing I know about it is Lauren Hill has an album, The Miseducation of Lauren Hill. Cameron Post, yeah. Where she has a couple of songs about Zion. And I think that's kind of a traditional thing about 70s singers in America, black singers, is that they often sing about going to Zion. So I don't really know what the cultural context is there, to be completely honest. Yeah, which I tried to do a quick reading around before this episode.
Some things you don't want to skim, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. But there is a connection between Black America and Zionism, and I'm not sure what it is.
And it's funny with vampire covens in the show, you often get more like intercultural and like a much more diverse group of vampires. You've like a redneck looking fella and a college co-ed and all they all intermix by the shared community of being the undead, the undead Americans.
Americans, that was I didn't like that line. So at one point Buffy is talking to Angel in the alleyway, and she's being really mean to him and trying to get him to leave her alone because she's
or fight her
yeah, Jesus. But she says to him, she calls him a vampire, and then she says, "Oh, sorry, do you prefer undead American?"
She specifically says, "Is that offensive? Do you prefer undead American?"
Which is a really awkward like PC culture in the 90s joke, suggesting that calling people African American or Native American is a PC phrase rather than calling them like Indians. But
I have to say, I feel like at the time this episode was written, that well of liberal versus conservative hatred hadn't been quite so deeply tapped as it is these days. No. So you could suggest something was overly PC and it could still be a meritable point, where now generally people who say that are fascists. Like I'm just saying 99% of the time the discourse has gone so far to either side of the scale that there's no centrist conversation to be had. But yeah, it was just her being mean. Exact thing I was going to say you do, but I meant third person you, and I meant me. Is when you're angry at someone, just really trying to find the thing that's going to hurt them the most. Like that's what she does in this episode.
True.
I'm surprised she doesn't like make fun of Giles for being like an undocumented immigrant or something.
Oh Jesus! Oh no, he's definitely documented.
When did he move here?
Just before she arrives here.
So there was a TV show that they picked called Ripper, which is about Rupert Giles growing up before he was a stuffy librarian and he's an occultist and all this kind of stuff.
I would absolutely watch it.
I loved it. I was so excited for the concept. And I feel like there's this whole pregnant part of his life between when he was a tearaway who didn't want to be a watcher and eventually settled into it. That should be filled in. That is like the next show I watch other than a Buffy show. Do you know what I mean?
Agreed. No, it'd be great. So Order of Aurelius. Yeah, so that's basically the order of the Masters people. Apparently established in the 12th century. I skimmed the Wikipedia entry about it.
They talk about it in season 1, and which I'm sure you're not surprised I remember, and I'm not surprised you don't remember. Not that you should, but Aurelius.
I'm glad I don't.
Aurelius was specifically a prophet who said all this shit was going to happen. So they
Marcus Aurelius.
No.
Oh.
Just Aurelius.
Okay. So yeah, that didn't include. So I presume Angel and Spike and all will be Order of Aurelius then.
Yeah, ostensibly, when they were sired by Darla.
Well, Darla's the source of. So the Master Sire is
the grandsire of that entire order.
The Master Sire is Darla sires Angel sires Drusilla sires Spike.
Yeah, and so they're all part of the Order of Aurelius, and that whole collective sans the Master is called the Whirlwind. That's their pillaging and name. But yet, when we see the Master in later Buffy episodes and Angel episodes, any kind of flashbacks, that is the Order of Aurelius that's there pretty much since the 12th century.
Very cool.
And we know that his origin, roughly speaking, from the kind of extra textual stuff, is as he was a German. He came from what was the former kind of Rhineland, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so at least 800 years ago, if not longer. He was one of the oldest living vampires.
And of course, that being a very active reference to Nosferatu, from which he takes a lot of influence design-wise.
Oh yeah, apparently they initially pitched the Master as being basically looking like Tommy Wiseau in the room.
Oh wow,
long black hair and kind of traditional romance vampire. And Mark Metcalf said, "No, I want to do this freaky like bat face thing."
Good job, Mark Metcalf.
Yeah, from Nosferatu specifically, which is if anyone knows the vampires at all, there are exactly two kinds of vampires in the world, and everything else is a variation. One is the sexy Dracula, and the other is the rock face Nosferatu, and everything is somewhere in between there.
Absolutely. One of the things I read this week actually about this was Mark Field, who I read his blog every week to read about what he thinks about each episode, because it's a good overview of what the critical thought is, essentially. So thank you, Mark Field, for providing that. But one of the things he says about this episode is people have argued back and forth online about why the Master's bones remain in this. Yeah. And he's like, well, Joss Whedon doesn't really give a shit about that kind of thing. Joss Whedon just included them because it was a great image and it gives great emotional weight in this episode, rather than it being an implication in the lore. There's no lore implication. It's just a great thing to be able to have Buffy smash his bones and see them like impaled on a spike at the end of season 1. Yeah, like I can retroactively make a lore implication for it, but the reality is, from a textual point of view, it doesn't matter fundamentally, and there is some value to pointing that out, that sometimes you can read into things too much. But also from a mystical point of view, part of what is meant to be terrifying about this stuff is that it's not always explicable or predictable. So these things will happen, and you can presume that if there is a reason for it, it is unknown and unknowable specifically. Yeah, I think the bones, if nothing, we still talk about it. It's an evocative image. So that's why it has value. Specifically, I was having a look at what the next episode was, which is about robots. Apparently someone challenged Joss Whedon in the writer's room, like, why are people in Sunnydale so technologically advanced? And he's like, you're thinking about it too much. The Hellmouth makes evil things happen, and what these evil people wanted to do was make this evil robot. That's why they could do it, and that's it. Motive more than mechanic, which is the best way to write. It's emotional realism. So a couple of things before we wrap up. One, do you want to talk about the Anointed? Yeah, so in terms of the Anointed, something I want to talk about maybe next week before the Anointed gets killed, which is going to happen very shortly, What? Is he did an AMA on Reddit, the actor did, but hey, I was the Anointed in the 90s and Buffy asked me anything. And there's some interesting points in there which I think would be good to unpack. But the Anointed's one's main purpose now is to be another trope to be unraveled by Spike, essentially. And Spike, who comes in and is this Billy Idol looking vampire, or as he said, Billy Idol stole his look from him, and is a subversion of the vampire trope. And what this show desperately needs right now is for that vampire trope to be modernized, and that's basically what the Anointed is there for, is to be something to be sidestepped and to be the first example of because the Master was quite a traditional villain in some ways through season 1. Sure. The Anointed is set up as a big bad, and what he's there to be is like a few episodes in to be killed for us to go. And that's really it, I think. And very much killed with such finality that the concept of a vampire coven, a vampire king, or prophecy vampires largely disappears from the mythos after this, and we generally go to modern vampires. So it's a very strong thematic move, I think. You're totally right. I never thought about it that way. The symbolism of Spike so aggressively killing this Anointed one is the suggestion that, it's a movement from the idea of a prophecy to the idea of an aggression. Yeah. It's great. Of going off script. And I think when you think about it, that thing we come to know Buffy quite well for, that subversion, or that you're about to death drop and then you say no, that starts with Spike. In that episode, I think. I've always thought when I look back at the show. I think the Master definitely rejects a lot of the vampire themes. Yeah. To some degree, in the sense that he can access that youth speech. He does a good job of it, but he eventually loses. He does. Yeah, you're right. Spike is the ultimate example of the rejection of that kind of traditional patriarchy in favor of a slightly queered version of a vampire that still is aggressive and still is dangerous. And Spike, who survives until the last episode of Angel, the TV show. So he... Does he survive?
Yes. So he makes it through with that energy to a certain degree. And
He does.
It's my TED Talk, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
Oh, there's going to be so many TED Talk jokes when we watch the episode TED.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, talking about Ted, there's just while the episode is fading to that really awful music where Willow and Xander have accepted her back into the fold, Buffy, because she's obviously very worried that they're going to hate her now. And it's kind of a touching scene where they've held a seat for her and they just make it light. And it's a very nice, quiet moment that's quickly disrupted by the worst like upbeat music of all time. Hated it. One of the things they say is, maybe we could go play mini golf. And Willow says, there's no mini golf course. And Xander says, maybe we can go play mini tennis. But later on in the season, because I think it's season 2 that has Ted in it, they play mini golf. So that is bad writing, Joss Whedon. I want you to take your whole TV show away now, please.
And can it. The Buffy Wikipedia never misses a beat, because there is specifically an item on there that says, notes what you just said, and says, however, it may be that the golf course simply has not been built yet.
Fucking nerds.
Yeah, nerds.
Nerds. Okay.
There is an expression for that.
What is it?
For this kind of filling in the potholes in a show where fans do it excessively, it's called fan wanking. It's a specific thing. Yeah.
That's me, actually. That's what I do all the time. Yeah, so one thematic note I wanted to hit on is the nursery rhymes that occur throughout the episode. Did you notice these?
No. Bring it to me.
Okay. So a couple of things. One is the title of the episode. When she was bad. Yeah. So what's that from?
I should know. I was quizzical over that.
And apparently this is by an actual poet, which is weird. It's always weird when nursery rhymes have an origin. But this is by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. There was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was very, very good. But when she was bad, she was hard. This is actually something that my parents used to say to me all the time, because I had kind of curly hair when I was younger. So they used to say when he was bad, he was hard, because they hated me. So that's what's happening here is when Buffy was bad, she was hard. So it's this it's actually a really reasonably easygoing reference. But I thought there was a theme going on here because of what Cordelia says later on in the episode when she's giving out to Buffy about being a bitch. She says, whatever's causing the Joan Collins feud, deal with it. Embrace the pain. Spank your in it, mop it. Whatever. But get over it. Because pretty soon you're not going to even have your loser friends you've got now. So obviously there you have the reference to Little Miss Moppet. Little Miss Moffat? Little Miss Moppet.
There's variations on it, I think.
Sure, but whatever it is, it's like the reference to an inner child, the small, delicate girl. And then finally you have when Buffy walks away from Cordelia, she very uncharacteristically pulls up a very huge black hood on top of her head, which I thought was a very Red Riding Hood
definitely
kind of reference as she walks away. So yeah, those are three different instances to nursery rhymes that I thought kind of pervaded through the episode. And nursery rhymes are a really big thing in Buffy. So you get Hush is the most famous example of nursery rhymes in Buffy. And I think there are a couple of other ones.
Hansel and Gretel,
for sure. Where I think it's just a consistent theme that Joss Whedon does like to bring in. But I thought it was a really great note in this episode because it does refer to this kind of like abandoning of childhood and the tension of childhood in this episode and
Absolutely.
The tension that Buffy experiences between having to let go of that and having to say goodbye to something that, is dear to anyone, that innocence. Because Innocence, of course, being the best episode of this season for my money's worth, which is the one where she and Angel have sex and he loses his soul.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Innocence, childhood, adulthood, all themes to look out for this season, which is such a good season.
Do you want to say anything about fashion?
We have Xander's Scooby-Doo t-shirt. Willow's wearing a really bright lime green jacket.
That girl from that band, Chibo Mateo.
Wow, Chibo Mato?
I pronounced that correct, Chiba Mato, who was paid for a guest spot in the Bronze in this episode, was just wearing kind of classic, I go to Burning Man and I'm a vegan and I have a dot on my forehead that I haven't earned and just weird eyeshadow and flowy bits. And
I burn really thick incense in my room.
Do, yeah.
Jenny Calendar does actually go to Burning Man apparently.
She does.
Jenny Calendar is wearing a really severe fringe in this episode, and I thought it really did not suit her. Didn't like it.
No, it's not her best haircut.
It's very French.
Actually, speaking of haircuts, Xander comments on how he likes Buffy's new hair in the start of this episode, as because Sarah Michelle Gellar got a new haircut to be in Scream 2.
Is she in Scream 2?
Apparently.
Oh, she is, very briefly.
Yeah.
She's in the classroom scene at the very start of it, isn't she?
Yeah.
I can't think of any major other notes of fashion. At one point I thought, oh, Xander's hair looks okay in this episode, but then he turned around and he had a bit of a mullet and it was like, oh, gross.
What I do hate in terms of fashion is the way they tried to note that the anointed one is meant to be, you know, they say don't mistake him for a child because he looks like a child. He is a child. He's a child vampire. They never portray that when people become vampires, they become adults, but they try to portray him as being an adult by dressing him like he's going to a slam poetry night with a big black turtleneck.
He wears a turtleneck.
Specifically,
awful.
It's odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose just before we kind of move into the denouement of the episode, the Buffy Bits for this episode were really just rich with some interesting points, I thought.
Hit us with it, Joel.
Buffy Bits. So the first thing I point out is you point out the thing about the golf course, which I really enjoyed. There is first reference to attempting to raise a vampire from the dead during the Buffy canon, which actually becomes quite a recurring thing. And it's successful when they raise Darla from the dead in Buffy Darla
the other show
in Angel. But that episode
the episode
okay.
Which episode, Joe?
Okay. This is my favorite episode title, I think, in Angel.
Go on.
Because Angel has to deal with a lot of the shit Buffy has to deal with on Angel, and he deals with a thing called the Shanshu prophecy, and it's about a vampire who will achieve something as a champion and regain his mortality, and that's kind of what he works towards. And Shanshu is translated from the ancient Sumerian as both to live and to die. And the point is that the vampire will die but will become human. And the episode that Darla comes back in is called To Shanshu in LA, as in to live and to die in LA. Which I just really, really enjoy.
Awful.
Yeah, it's very good.
Awful.
The Wikipedia notes this episode is the first time of 3 times that Buffy characters break the fourth wall.
Yeah, Buffy looking at the
camera and saying, "Have you missed me?" You know, clearly intending to speak. I don't count that.
No,
Clearly speaking to Xander and Willow. Like a big on the edge. It's like when she says sometimes, "Oh, vampires again must be a Tuesday," as a reference to their time slot.
Yeah.
But, you know, we let that one go.
I think the once more feeling fourth wall breaking is much more active.
Yeah, like once more feeling is mentioned, and also apparently Lauren in an Angel episode does at some point, but I also don't think that's the case. He probably does something similar where he says,
sure.
I'm going over here now. Obviously, because all this thematic stuff with her distrusting Angel and saying, do you want to fight, who will win? And obviously they end up winning, or they end up fighting at the end of the season. But there was a lot of stuff where they wanted to promote the episode for season 2 coming back, the network, and there's a couple of great advertisements they have on the Wikipedia here, which also look like screen posters, and one is her kind of hugging a door with Angel photoshopped in the background saying you've seen her in America's #1 movie. Now see how she spends her Monday nights. Get home before dark. And it says this summer being capitalized for Buffy Summers. It also says divided by destiny, bound by love, come see Buffy the Vampire Slayer and, you know, her vampire lover. And it's this whole kind, but it's entirely pictures of the show being about this romance between Buffy and Angel, which is not really what it's about. Like, it's a big
if
theme.
It's ever about it though, it's in this season.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I just kind of really, really enjoy all of that.
That's a very successful marketing campaign because this season is the height of the Buffy phenomenon.
Do Buffy and Angel have a good couple name?
Oh, Bangle. So this is like when Buffy and Angel like get together, and by the end of season 2, like from there the ratings drop off season after season. Like people stop watching because they tuned in to see that like star-crossed lovers kind of thing.
Yeah,
which is fair, but like, you know, whatever.
And I suppose the last thing I want to do in terms of Buffy Bits is just talk about the kill count. And something I overlooked in the last episode in Prophecy Girl because I was weeping was to talk about who died in the episode, so I'll do that very quickly.
One thing I wanted to mention there while you're looking it up is that 2 different people in this episode foreshadow Buffy being expelled. Snyder says that he smells expulsion on her and prison, and Joyce says that she just wants her to make it through the year in school.
You know,
and that's kind of sad because she doesn't.
Happen, yeah.
No.
So in Prophecy Girl, Buffy kills 3 vampires, 5 students are killed in the AV room in that horrible scene we talked about.
Yeah.
Various vampire minions are killed, and the 2 most probably significant potentially people who die in the episode are the Master and Buffy Summers.
Oh yeah, good point. Buffy being on our death list or kill list or death count is kind of cool.
Yeah, guest appearance.
Yeah.
And in this episode, which we had just watched, there is the vamp that Angel stakes at the start of the episode to make her dramatic return. There's, as you said, a number.
You said Angel, but you meant Buffy.
I did mean Buffy. There's a number of vampire stakes which had names, which, as you said, I don't think was necessary. Tara, Walt, Jane, Ned, and Bob. are all the vampires who were staked.
This is the first time that Buffy's staked a female vampire on screen.
That's true. And she burns Absalom, who is a black vampire, to death.
Absalom, yeah.
And they make very clear we have CGI budget now, so we see him kind of incinerate. You know?
It was a pretty good little moment of CGI, actually, I thought, to be honest.
Yes, that's it for me on that. But yeah, it's just getting into this really lore-heavy period in Buffy, which I'm very prepared for.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for season 2. I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shit, we have to do recording. Ratings. I haven't thought about this. Okay. Joel, write down your rating, quick. Do you just pretend to type?
I did, I know my rating is.
You have to write it down, though, remember? Okay, who wants to go first?
I think you went first last time, so I'll go first this time.
Go for it.
I would give this episode an 8.1 knockoff stars of David.
Okay, very good, very good. 8.1, respectable. I think it's lower than that for me. So I'm going to go for a 7.7 Bitkaz out of 10.
Bitka was a good one.
Thank you.
I wish I could thought of it so I could have stolen it from you.
I thought you were going to be honest.
I would point out that I did actually write down 8.0 and I forgot as I started to speak, but I'm going to stick with 8.1 because
8.1
I feel like
respectable,
that's my Rorschach test response. The first thing that came to mind was 8.1.
Fair enough. Okay, so yeah, thank fuck, that's done.
Yeah, Chinese on the way, traditionally. Just before we finish up, because I mentioned that next week we're going to be watching the episode Some Assembly Required, which is about some high schoolers in Sunnydale High of all places who try to build a robot body to build a girlfriend for their friend who was horribly mangled in a car accident. It's the whole thing, which we're going to have to get into.
Do you mean robot body or do you mean zombie body?
I think there's some robot components to it.
I think it might be zombie. My recollection is zombie.
Let's find out.
Let's find out together.
It's a journey together. Let's find out.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something witty to say to close this out. I can't really think of anything, to be honest.
Well, if we didn't say anything witty during the episode, we're not going to think about it now.
Yeah, you're right.
All I would say is thanks very much for listening. Very happy to be back here after a long hiatus in season 2. Excited to be on this podcasting network that we've just joined. And yeah,
if you're listening to another podcast about Buffy, you need to stop now. You need to write them a letter and tell them that you're not going to be listening to them anymore because you're a Buffy Boys boy.
Other podcasts about Buffy keep following us on Twitter, and I don't know what the etiquette is. Are we meant to be friends, or should I hate them?
We're all supposed to be friends together in being complete fucking failures,
yes,
to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom. Okay,
why?
Because I'm a failure. I'll apologise because my mom listens to the show. Your mother doesn't, so she won't hear it.
Well, let's be real, Joel. That means that the true failure in this group is me.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry to my mom that Brian is a failure. So we'll see you next week on Buffy Boys. I've been Joel and you've been
Joel. No, Brian. That's the other one.
Fuck, take 2. Okay, thanks very much for listening. See you guys next week.
See you, Buffy
Boys.
Yeah, great, good.